I'm Tim Kittro, and here to bring home the bacon are Big Ryan the Fat Guy.
Yeah, arguably the least cool guy you know. What's up, YouTube? It's the NFL picks against the spread for Week 11, 21-22 NFL season. Fat Guy, we are 73-71, just over 50% for the year. Onto the Thursday night special, New England Patriots at the Atlanta Falcons. Falcons +4, 7% of early bettors are on the Falcons, who just took a big loss. Is there closing line value here between New England and Atlanta?
Yeah, so we're gonna do a little bit of distinctions because I did preface this whole year with obtaining closing line value, and I still think it is the best metric. But there's better ways of. It's not always just betting the spread. For instance, there's a lot of money line instances where that's better. And can I say definitively in this video what to take when? No, that's not really the point of these videos. Is actually the picks, oddly enough. It's the information and the decision-making process behind them. So let's take a look at this game. New England is kind of gained some, we'll call it public confidence. And Atlanta shot theirs a little bit, right? Because anytime you listen to one of those stupid talk shows, they can frame it any which way. They can come up with a trend. They can use superfluous statistics to enhance any argument. That being said, where is the public's confidence going to line, and where is the line going to shift? And I think it's going to shift. It's pretty obvious here. Do I like taking the idea of taking Atlanta with the points in a do down situation, but in this current price, I think it will shift. It'll shift to New England -6. So in reality, if you like the Falcons, you want to buy late. If you like the Patriots, you want to buy early, and that's just kind of how you want to do things. So as far as this contest is going, with the goal of obtaining closing line value, not necessarily return on investment, but good closing line value does lead to return on investment. Sorry for all the window dressing, as we like to use football terms from time to time. It'll be the New England Patriots -4, even though it's a do up, do down situation, because I do think this will shift to a target price of New England -6.
And even from this early recording time, Fat Guy, this line has opened at Pinnacle now, -5.5. So there's already some CLV on New England -4.
There you go.
Before it came out there. On to the next game, Baltimore at the Chicago Bears. Bears 6-point dogs at home, 39% of early bettors on the Bears. Fat Guy, who you got?
Well, this is just it here. What happened? The Bears coming off a bye. So what I'm going to be talking about too is we kind of mentioned it a bit more in the last pick video, is elasticity in terms of confidence. I want to know how hard the Ravens get hit here, right? Because that was I really enjoyed the game, to be honest. The Thursday nighter against Miami, where I felt they were thoroughly beaten. They really, really were. And I would imagine that a lot of the talking points will be that Lamar has been figured out, which is such a simple way. Like, and the other thing too is when you hear something like, okay, Lamar Jackson has been figured out, that doesn't translate to a number. And we're not betting on whether Lamar Jackson is going to have a little bit less success. Even if we were, a proposition bet would still have to be numerical, right? So those talking points, they don't convert it into numbers, right? It's not quantitative data, right? So that being said, this 6 number, I think, is going to favor Chicago. I think you might get more people abstaining from betting on the Ravens, and the standard amount of people betting on Chicago. So if there is a shift, I think it's more likely to 5.5 or 5, giving closing line value to the Bears. Also, the shift, it's easier to shift down than shift up, because key numbers is 7. 5 and 5.5 are not key numbers. 4.5, not so much really. Like the gap between 6 downwards is 5.5 to a point, because 6 is a key number. And then for the favorite, that's a little bit better. But 6.5 is more so, because game's more, and in 6 a little bit more so when the favorite's laying the 6. Anyways, long story short, it's easier to shift down. And I think with the Ravens' poor performance, you might get more people abstaining from adding it to their parlays, thus making it more likely of a Chicago Bears shift down. Closing line value, Bears +6.
Fat Guy, next up, the Houston Texans travel to Tennessee to take on the Titans, who are 10.5-point favorites at home. Unfortunately, there's no betting percentages yet for this game. Do you see any closing line value on either side?
Yeah, well, this is the odd one, but we're playing the probability of numbers. We're using CLV in conjunction with key numbers, right? Um, so I do think it's more likely to shift in favor of the Titans. I mean, they might not have covered, but they still have a strong record, and I think a strong rapport with the public at 8-2, right? Like it's a pretty big win, and the Derrick Henry stuff I think is going to be a little bit more of an afterthought because they're still able to pull off a win. The Texans are not in everybody's mind necessarily just because they came off a bye. So all that being said, I do think it'll shift in the Titans' way, but that's a probability. It's what I think is not a certainty. It's way more damning if this line shifts to 10, right? Because this key number 10 is probably the most active number within these two within this game. And another reason for that would be is Houston is pretty traditional. They're more likely to cover spreads. They don't go for it a ton on fourth down, or at least in the right spots. So they're less likely to risk more to win the game. So they're more likely to cover. And covering a game at 10 is a really key number. So I think that I'd rather risk it and take the 10.5 now than lose that hook, that half point. So whereas if it moves to 11, the loss in equity between 10.5, 11, 11.5 is just so minimal that I'm okay with taking that risk, even though I do think Tennessee, it's probably going to shift in their way, just not in a damning percentage. So in a convoluted way, in a convoluted show this evening, we're going to be taking the Houston Texans plus 10.5.
Fat guy. Next up, we have Saints, Eagles, and this is a pick 'em as of now. 40% of early bettors are on the Eagles. Is there closing line value on either side?
I don't know if there is. This is one where I'm kind of indifferent. I have to be honest. I'm just going to take the Eagles. This is a gun to my head contest. And, with chances of Trevor Siemian playing and some sort of weird combination with Taysom Hill, I prefer, a gun to my head and I have to make a gut choice. I prefer the, let's call it steady fortitude of the Eagles, if you can even call it. There's more of a seamless game plan, I would think. And the Eagles have been, competent in most games other than that Dallas Monday Nighters. So this is just purely a gut pick. I don't foresee closing line value, or at least I don't have a good indicator of which way it's going to shift, if at all. So I would be taking the Eagles, and I'm going to lay the 0 points. Let's go Eagles to win.
Next up, we have Dolphins, Jets plus 2.5 at home. Is there closing line value? And I'm going to tease this a little bit. Is there middling value in this game?
There's massive middling value. Now, this is the one I circled here when we did our little pregame. We'll call it a pregame meeting. So a pre-show meeting is laying 2.5 with Miami here. I think is a really good spot because I think you could get a shift to plus 3.5. Minus 3.5, so plus 3.5 on the Jets. And that leaves you with the ultimate, the god of all key numbers is 3. And why do I think it's going to shift that way? It's not that difficult of a process here. Miami played a primetime game and played very, very competently. Very competently. So we have to think in terms of simple thinking because that's who our opponent, the public, that's what they think. They think simply. So Miami has gone way up in stock. And it's not that, like, if Miami were to play someone like Indianapolis or I'm trying to think of someone middling, Las Vegas, for instance, you're not going to get that type of reaction necessarily. Whereas the Jets had 4 turnovers with Mike White. They had turnovers with Zach Wilson. So whoever is playing quarterback, they're going to draw that comparison. Oh, look what Miami did to Lamar Jackson. Oh, they're going to just crush the Jets, right? And of course, the Jets getting crushed this weekend. So you have a do up, do down. So do up from the Jets, do down from the Dolphins. Line shift to 3.5. I get minus 2.5 on Miami on one side. I get plus 3.5 on the other. I'm going to lose the juice on one side. So if you prorate it, and by the way, I did a video on middling for the Big Ryan the Fat Guy channel, which would explain this concept. And I think it's the problem with middling, though, is there a guarantee it's going to shift to 3.5? No. I'm speculating on speculation. So I think Miami is the clear play here. And if it gets to Jets plus 3.5, I'm most certainly going to take it. Even if it gets to Jets reasonable juice at +3, I'd be willing at close to sell a few extra points to pick up the Jets +3.5, just so I can get that middle. And we're not going to give away exactly what the chances are of this game landing on Miami by 3, but it's high and it will outrun just about any juice. I say that, but then there's a big ride brought to my attention, 80-cent lines where they charge -140 on both sides. So, I mean, if that's the stuff you're paying, and by the way, that is out there, which is completely outrageous. By another segue, you want to be paying -105, 10-cent lines, 5 per side, not this -110 or a certain poker site's charging -118 per side. You want to avoid that stuff. You can't beat it. I mean, it proved me wrong. And if you could beat it, wouldn't you want to keep more profits? Anyways, a convoluted show, Miami -2.5 to try to obtain the middle by buying back on the Jets at +3.5.
Fat guy. Next up, Indy at Buffalo. The Bills -6.5 point favorites at home. Is there closing line value on either side?
This is like a weird one for me. I don't really like this game in terms of the spread market. It's not my favorite. I'm really indifferent between Indianapolis and Buffalo at this number, and I actually like the value on Indy just to win outright. I feel there's a coaching mismatch in terms of game management, and Buffalo is more likely to cover massive spreads. So you could make the argument that if you were to take the spread market, you're better off taking Buffalo. Whereas Indy, the way Indy plays, they play straight to win. So they're less likely to cover as underdogs, even though I am taking them. But this is a gun to my head selection. I like Indy to win this game. I think this is like a perfect meld of styles, and so I'm really interested in this one as a fan. And this is a rematch from the playoffs of just a year ago. So in the contest, I'm going to take Indy +6.5. Not exactly a pick I like, but I do like Indy on the money line, I will admit.
This has gone up to 7, at least at Pinnacle. But if you did want to take money line, you can get Indy on the money line at +246. Next up, Detroit at Cleveland. Cleveland 10-point favorites at home. 75% of early bettors are on the Browns. Fat guys, their closing line value on either side.
It's another really tough one. It gets tougher as it kind of funnels as the year goes on. The samples get bigger, and not like they can't really actually get big. When you think of how many games every other sport plays, especially baseball, things are a lot more solved near the end than football. There's more leniency. That's why you pay more juice on football than you do baseball. That's another thing for people to think about. Food for thought. That being said, I'm going to be taking the Detroit Lions. I'm going to take the 10 points. I think the very ugly tie might have helped them, and the Browns getting destroyed by the Patriots, that might have hurt them. So in terms of which team is going to get closing line value, I could see this closing at 9.5. But again, I don't have a strong indicator one way or another, despite there is also early line markets betting on the Browns. I could see the Browns winning by 40 very, very easily. But that being said, I'm just going to take the 10 points, and a tough one because I'm really not sure, but I'm leaning towards the Lions getting CLV.
Next up, Packers at the Minnesota Vikings. Vikings +2 at home. 47% of early bettors are on the Vikings. Fat guy, is there closing line value on either side?
I think there is on Green Bay. I think Green Bay is starting to become almost Super Bowl favorite. I had a friend who took them at 12-1 before this weekend slate of games. And it's so funny how the reactionary, one game really means nothing, but the reaction off that game does move the odds, jostles them around a little bit. And Green Bay is becoming a favorite, I believe, like pretty close. Of course, you got the Rams, but the Tampa Bay Bucks just lost on the weekend. Rams have a couple of losses. There's some Murray health question marks in terms of Arizona. Not that Arizona, I feel, is really of the quality of the other teams, but the record is on par. So you do kind of use that to extrapolate some sort of odd set. So all of that being said, I'm going to take Green Bay, and I expect this to settle around Green Bay -2.5 or 3 with pretty bad juice. So that's my idea on this one. And again, I don't think it's the strongest of indicators, but I don't think laying Green Bay with 2 is necessarily a bad idea. So Green Bay -2 is the play.
Next up, we have the Washington football team traveling to Carolina to take on the Panthers, who are 2-point favorites at home. 94% of early bettors are on the Cam Newton edition Carolina Panthers.
The new you trying to do a new edition thing here? You really botched that one. But we do give him this is a one take show, so I deserve some grace period from time to time, and so does he. So want to speak of do up, do down? Well, these are both do down teams. Carolina putting a spanking on Arizona. And is this the upset of the weekend, Big Rye? The football team over the Tampa Bay Bucks?
It's got to be. I forget what the odds were, but I think that was the biggest upset of the week.
Pretty low, right? There's one issue with the football team, and usually I like injuries outside of quarterback usually aren't a big thing, but Chase Young went down and Montez Sweat was hurt, and I don't know the status of Montez Sweat's injury. I haven't exactly poked through it, but that's okay. Those are the two best players in my opinion on that team, and that's a cluster injury on the D line. Is that really factored into this line? I'm not buying it. Neither is 94% of the public here. And is Cam Newton the real deal? I don't really care. It's not that. I just need someone to play semi-competent football, and he certainly was in a turnkey, step off the bar stool, as Tank Abbott tended to say, performance from the Carolina Panthers. So Cam Newton is also an offense that's harder to study for. So that's another thing that is a little bit difficult for the football team going forward. They have an injured defense against possibly surprising offense, right? Because clearly Arizona's defense is no slouch, and they had a very tough time with what Carolina threw at them today. So I think this is a little bit of mispricing, and I think this could shift all the way up to 3.5, possibly, like Big Rise Camera just did. So we're going to go with Carolina -2, and I think there's closing line value on this play.
Well, Mr. Telephone Man, do you think the Washington football team can stand the rain? On to the next one. San Fran at Jacksonville. Jacksonville +5.5 at home. Unfortunately, no betting market data. Is there closing line value on this interesting line of 5.5?
Yeah, another weird one. I'm going to take Jacksonville. It's technically a look-ahead line as San Francisco hasn't played. We are filming this during the Saturday night football game between the Chiefs and the Raiders. That being said, I'm going to take the Jags. I'm going to take the 5.5 points. I think that this line is so-so as it is, and there is a chance for San Francisco injury. The one thing is San Francisco, it's not like as damning if, say, like the most important player on that team, whether you want to believe he's good or not, that's not what we're debating. He's, in terms of positional importance and impact on the game, is Jimmy Garoppolo. But the one thing for San Francisco is that it's not like the most massive of drop downs if indeed Trey Lance, the rookie, plays. Kind of like another good example would be Miami. Like, it's a pretty lateral move between both. You could argue Tua's, in our opinion, slightly better, right? Win probability of a weak 1.5, not a key 1.5. But that would kind of be the similar scenario in San Francisco. But if I think this line is kind of neutral at 5.5, then I get a free roll at an injury, then I'm just going to take the dog here. So the dog, when I do know that they're relatively healthy. So I'm going to take the Jacksonville Jags. I'm going to take the 5.5 points. And also, too, the strategy that the Jags employs, kind of like I mentioned, which is the Colts earlier, is in contrast in terms of coach decision making. They're conservative to a point where I think they're better off at covering spreads. Obviously, you could point to the Bills, the huge upset they had on the Bills, knocking out most people from Survivor last week, where that could be you could be like, well, how did that happen? Why? I think the Bills are one of those teams that are very likely to cover huge spreads, but very likely to lose games outright. Just more so, they're more polarizing in that aspect. So how does that relate to the Jags? I think they're more likely to cover. So yeah, they did win. They did win and cover last week, and I think with a look ahead line, they're the right contest selection not exactly sure if this is a real money play yet.
On to the next one, Cincinnati Bengals at the Las Vegas Raiders. Fat Guy, this is another pick 'em. Is there closing line value?
Weird. Well, it'd be easier if I could glance over at the television screen and see that the Vegas Raiders were killing the Chiefs, but they're currently losing deep into this first half. That being said, I still think that this should be a -2, and I'm not sure it's going to shift because I'm not sure how reactionary a loss to the Chiefs at home would be. And this game's not over; things can change, obviously. But I think this game should be Raiders -2. So is there going to be closing line value? It's there. I don't have a lot of good indicators of which way this could shift. It is technically a look ahead line, as I said, because they are playing. So, but I think the line at close should probably be Raiders -2. Thus, there is theoretical closing line value, but I'm not super confident on it. So we'll just take the Raiders at a pick.
Next up, Arizona at Seattle. Seattle -1 at home. 33% of early bettors are on the Seahawks. You figure the early 67% are probably betting on Kyler Murray being healthy to play in this one?
Yeah, that's my guess. That is my guess. Because he was like, it's rare for him to be a near game time decision 2 weeks in a row and not play. Like, do you remember the last time something like that happened? Or maybe they're
especially
playing...
such a marquee player. Like, you expect a guy like him to be, to know
chomping
sooner.
At the bit, if we're going to use an overused idiom.
Yeah. But this is something we talked about earlier with the coaching staff as well. Like, we feel like this coaching staff is going to kind of go on the side of caution.
For lack of a better word.
And you asked me for a comparison, and you said it was spot on, and that was Tony Dungy. Kind of reminds me of like a Tony Dungy-led team.
Well, Tony Dungy-led Colts team, which they went 15-1, 14-1 leading into week 17, and then they turned the reins over to Curtis Painter, and they rested everyone as they had the number 1 seed locked up. That's bankroll wise, it's one of the biggest bets the Fat Guy's ever made was Buffalo -7 against a rested Colts team, and I believe Buffalo crushed them. I don't think that was back in the old days. There were spots like that, and I feel like they're few and far between for the market to be that off. That being said, this isn't priced with a guarantee that Murray is playing. And I find that strange, right? Like you said, the Tony Dungy, the coddling, for lack of a better word, or caution would be a euphemism, perhaps, or maybe I'm overreacting by using a word like coddling, but or maybe they're hiding an injury, which not exactly follows the rules of the NFLPA, but it is possible that he does have a more significant injury than they're leading on. But I mean, you could let the division slip away if he doesn't play enough games. They were able to get the win against San Francisco, but they had a telling loss against Carolina this weekend, and that could very much happen against Seattle. The one issue with closing line value, Seattle had a really poor performance. So my guess is that a lot of the talking points this week are going to be about the health of Russell Wilson in terms of his grip on the ball. Because, it's not odd. Like, has Russell Wilson ever put up a zero ball? Especially since he's matured to the player he has. I certainly can't remember one. So there is going to be that talking point. We're just going to take Arizona here. We're going to take the 1 point on the idea that Kyler Murray isn't going to miss a third game, third game time decision. So that's kind of where the sentiment is. Is Kyler Murray going to play? We're betting on yes. And if their answer is yes, there is going to be closing line value on the Arizona Cardinals. Let's on to the next one.
Next one is Dallas at Kansas City. Kansas City -2.5 at home. There's no early betting market because this game is, Kansas City is still playing. So there is a chance that there could be a major injury or a few injuries that could affect this line.
Well, technically it is a look ahead line, like you had said. I think Dallas money line is probably going to would be the best way to maximize closing line value. The issue with CLV, also another, to go into it further this episode more than others, is sometimes you don't realize it as much with a spread. Like, for instance, say Dallas wins the game by 3. it didn't really matter whether you got spotted 2 points or 10 points, right? So it's not really a difference. It only matters if you get Dallas at, say, +1, and then they lose by 2, right? So that's really has a lower chance of happening. Whereas if you bet them, just straight to win, if they do win, the pricing gap between 2.5 and say it closes at a pick'em, and the matching money line is going to be a significantly less payout than it would be as 2.5-point dogs. So what that would end up with is a better realization of closing line value in terms of money line, considering these aren't exactly super key numbers. So I think the play here is the Dallas Cowboys, who have put together a really nice season so far, and this type of blowout is going to stick in the minds of bettors, because this is a pretty square bet game. So I can imagine they're going to go to a window, because they're pretty down on Kansas City these days because of their lack of covering ability, let's call it, over the last 2 seasons. So I think the play is to bet Dallas money line, and you could always end up, if the line shifts enough, you could end up in what's called an arbitrage spot. So say that the line moves swiftly because of an injury during this game, or perhaps the Raiders come back in the second half and just crush the Chiefs, for instance. What would happen is the line could shift as a knee-jerk reaction to bettors flocking to the window on the Cowboys, making the Chiefs an underdog. And then what would happen is you have both sides at plus money, and then you're guaranteed money. Why that this is difficult to do, an arbitrage in this spot, is because you need that shift. So I don't think it's going to happen, that situation. But it did happen for me in a game earlier, Tampa Bay and the LA Rams. So these are the things you got to look for. Like I said, the show is more about understanding opportunity, angles, and betting tools, rather than necessarily who's going to cover and who's going to win. So that being said, for the contest, I'm going to take the Dallas Cowboys, and I'm going to be taking them on the money line as well.
Fat guy. Next up, we have the Sunday night game between the Pittsburgh Steelers and the LA Chargers. Chargers spotted 3.5 points at home. Who do you like on the closing line?
Well, they're spotting. They're laying the 3.5 points to the Steelers. The one issue with this is there's a Ben Roethlisberger aspect to it, because if he plays, I'm not sure if this line should be 3.5. So the speculation of it is pretty difficult. I'm going to take the Chargers in the contest, and that's with a lens of not understanding exactly what the probability of Ben Roethlisberger playing. That's a tough one these days, these COVID last-minute outs. Is he going to make the week? You know what I mean? I'm not exactly sure what's the earliest date he could possibly make, because he was ruled inactive today, right? And was it Saturday night technically? Do you know what I mean? So when is he exactly going to be available, and what's the probability of that? I'm just going to take the Chargers and go under the assumption that it's going to be Mason Rudolph, and that's where this point spread lies. And that being said, too, the Chargers, I think, are a team that can really thump people. They haven't exactly done it. They've had a couple listless performances, i.e. losing me money against the Minnesota Vikings just this past weekend. But I think that another ones I'd almost be rather reverse tease this up to -6.5, and hope that the Chargers win by a touchdown or more in the event that it is Mason Rudolph. But those derivative markets aren't exactly always available, and you do have to do your homework in terms of whether you're paying more money, like insurance for blackjack, or are you taking advantage in the rare instance that insurance is profitable in a blackjack game, just to give you a gambling analogy. So that being said, this is under the proviso that Mason Rudolph is playing, and to lay the 3.5 points with the LA Chargers.
And just remember, this is a Sunday night football game, not a Saturday night football game. On to Monday night between the New York Giants and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Buccaneers -12.5. No betting market as of yet, fat guy. Is there closing line value on this game?
Potentially. This is the one in terms of I've brought up the word elastic, like I said, in terms of Econ 101 for the failed university students such as myself. I like to call us amateurs, didn't stick around. We had better things to do, right? We can't all get big papers on the wall like Big Rye over there. That being said, we're going to be taking the Giants. We're taking the 12.5 points. Giants coming off a bye. which is factored into the line, generally speaking. That's why it's so funny when people say, oh, so-and-so is hurt. You think a line, unless you have the line, ranked up by time and then match it with the injury, you can actually tell. But most of everything is baked into the line. So that being said, I want to see, going back to the elastic idea, I want to see how much that loss to Washington has sunk with bettors, because bettors are overreactionary. And is this loss to the football team, which would have sewered many a parlay? Because I would imagine that the Bucks would have been a very popular parlay ticket. So I'm going to be taking the New York Giants and at 12.5. And also too, like, there's not really very many key numbers here. So the urgency isn't as big if you wanted to wait for a better price potentially and get more on New York, if you lost the half point, because key numbers are really 10 and 14 here. You're going to have some 13s, but 11 and 12 wins by 11 and 12 are pretty rare. Think about it. You can go through it. You can do this math. It's not for us to do. Well, it is, but not for us to share for free. Let's put it that way. So I'm going to take the Giants. I'm going to take the 12.5 points, and I'm going to look for the elasticity of bettors in terms of a reactionary Tampa Bay upset at the hands of the football team.
Fat guy, onto the lightning round. New England at Atlanta.
New England Patriots.
Baltimore at Chicago.
Bears.
Houston, Tennessee.
Texans.
A pick'em between New Orleans and Philly.
We went long with the video. Let's go quick with this. The Eagles.
Dolphins, Jets.
Oh, Dolphins.
Colts, Bills.
Colts.
Lions, Browns.
Lions.
Packers, Vikings.
Packers.
Football team, Carolina Panthers.
Carolina Panthers.
Niners, Jags.
Jags.
Bengals, Raiders.
Raiders.
Cards, Seahawks.
Cardinals.
Dak Prescott's Cowboys versus Patrick Mahomes' Chiefs.
The brevity Cowboys.
Steelers, Chargers.
Chargers.
That was a Sunday night game. And the Monday nighter, New York Giants at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
I didn't say that. The Giants.
Week 9 leader, Wook Dog, going 8-5-1 and being closest to the pin on the, I believe it was the Bears Monday night game. I think you had a low 40s number, which was still the highest out of that three-way tie. So congrats, Wook Dog. A well-deserved win. And on to the Week 10 leaderboard, where we see someone who has been there pretty much all year in Colty Boy 69, only furthering his lead. Fat guy, you want to jump in there? We haven't
given a lot of credit. We keep talking about other guys that are catching him. Well, I don't think they are. Colty Boy 69, good on you. You're the Cassone of this year, and I'll be happy to transfer. You better get a Bitcoin wallet, buddy. You better get one.
And then onto the leaderboard, he's picked up a 5-game lead, 148 games, 87 wins, over 60%. Just an unreal season from Colty Boy.
Absolutely. Good on Colty Boy.
JS75, name of the week. Fat guy, take it away.
Oops, I did it again. Raiders. So not only do we have some topical business there, there's some allegory. It's multi-layered. Britney Spears getting her conservatorship thrown out via her father. And the Raiders making a little bit of an oopsie potentially with the Damon Arnett selection and then releasing, considering that really fun video that I'm sure you could find easily on the internet. They're earnestly hoping Josh's Chubb stays positive. I'll let you figure it out. And now we got an oxymoron, the late originator. I loved it. I love callbacks to the show, and you'll see who won, which to you guys might be boring, but I loved it. Why do I even bother? At least you're honest about how difficult it is to tickle the fat guy's fancy when it comes to a name of the week. Holy smokes, fat guy, let's start a trend. I did much better when there was a shirt on the line and not Bitcoin. Well, with the difficulties of people not getting everything on time, because shipping Canada to the US hasn't exactly been seamless for me. Trust me, we had to change to a digital model, let's call it. Immunized, Rogers that. I like how we spelled Rogers wrong too, which I found very funny. So read the room. There we go. I don't know how that one got in there.
This is the JS715 Name of the Week. Whoa, kaboom!
JS715, name of the week.
Tom and Jerry. I made a joke how I don't like how the British spell Jeffrey or Tom. Why does Tom have an H in it? I don't like it. Like, you know, what's the point of shortening the name? Thomas? That's like calling John Joe. Anyways.
Hot takes from Fat Guy. Make your picks against the spread for Week 11 at BigRyanTheFatGuy.com. There is a $100 USD prize in Bitcoin if anyone can catch Colty Boy this season. And Fat Guy, that's it. So I know there was one juicy game that you liked, and that's that Miami 2.5 because of the middle opportunity.
Yeah, that's absolutely it. And I'm just letting you know here, if I have to film through another allergic reaction, I'm not doing it.